Muchas gracias, Delia. Ahora compartirá con nosotros su experiencia DelaRosa, participante de Teach for America Indianapolis, generación 2002.
Hola, buenas tardes. Voy a presentar en inglés y después en español. The limits of my language mean the limits of my world. Out of worlds, I build worlds. I create new geographies, new landscapes. I take poet seeds to plant poet trees. Yo soy el architect. I build bridges instead of walls. Bridges that call one nation to the next. I test boundaries and borders. I expand limits between you and I, you, mi otro yo. Let us be limitless. Let us be in control. Let us be in control of our own voices, and thus our own choices, and thus our own worlds. This poem, written by a Latino student leader who is participating in the Teach for America and Enseña para México intercambio, has changed my life. The limits of my language means the limits of my world. A famous historical linguist, Ludwig Wittgenstein, left us with these bold and powerful words. I have this quote hanging on the front door of my classroom. I'm glad students are taking the time to absorb their surroundings and chase new narratives and by pursuing more language. My next hope is for them to think more globally as we continue this exchange. To question, does my racial, ethnic, linguistic identity apply to this quote? Can I expand my limits by way of my language? Since I was 4 years old, I've loved languages. In San Diego, California, I grew up in a house of broken Filipino, spread between my father and my mother, who immigrated from the US from the Philippines in 1980. Our home was located amidst a Spanish-speaking, low-income Mexican community, where we were blessed with ranchera every Sunday morning from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So it was a second nature to pick up Espanol as a third language, as well as associate myself with Mexican Americans throughout my life. However, today another language found me, an artistic language that brings all of the languages together, poetry, poesía. Slam poetry as my fourth language has been a tool to navigate through identity crisis and accessing a comunidad. During my first year in Teach for America, I was fortunate and lucky to put my passions into action. I was able to use this language to empower students through a nonprofit that I co-founded called indypulse. indypulse is a youth spoken word poetry organization centered around the core values of reflection, advocacy, and inclusion. We provide the space, the time, and resources for students to liberate themselves through language. We engage in challenging but necessary topics such as sexism, classism, racism, oppression, intersectionality, and liberation. Because of the programa de intercambio Aulas Sin Fronteras, we are able to apply these topics on an international scale. Our students in Indy, Boston, are able to step into the shoes of a Mexican student through their unique experiences, their triumphs and their struggles. They are able to learn empathy for one another through this exchange, a value that is rarely taught in America, but essential nonetheless. As a Teach for America alumnus, I'm proud to say that indypulse continues to make a tangible impact on the communities we serve. One student comes to mind. Her name is Marlene Marin, and she's a Mexican American. She was one of our first indypulse student leaders and even helped us earn first place in a competition to gain money and funding for our program. You can consider herself a co-founder of the program. Today, she now acts as the leader for indypulse as she coaches alongside our team and speaks at youth leadership summits sponsored by Latino Youth Collective, the biggest youth-led Latino organization in Indiana, and Teach for America Indianapolis. She embodies the very work we have set out to do: build community, empower student voice. Moreover, through this exchange, students like Marlene will have the opportunity to continue giving back to their own community. In terms of quantitative impact, we have expanded to 85 students per year, 8 schools in Indianapolis, 3 schools in Boston, with the name Boston Pulse, with a total of 400 community members. In the past, we have partnered with NPR, Angie's List, the Harvard Graduate School of Education, where students led professional development on identity and poetry, Teach for America, and Teach for the Philippines. As the executive director of Boston Pulse, the pilot program we started this year, my mission was to recruit more Latino student leaders to join our program in order to enrich our collective dialogue. When Jose Barguete Ramos, a 2014 Penn exchange partner and brother from another mother, came to co-teach at my school, we've been able to inspire Latino students as well as recruit them to participate in the program. Up to the exchange, I've only had one Latino student in Boston Pulse. But after Mr. Barguete, we recently did a Boston Pulse session on how to combat Donald Trump politics. I now have 6 students who identify as Latinos leaders in the session out of 20 students, nearly 1/3 of the program. There was something about validating our English language learner and other Latinos and bringing in an authentic Latino narrative that caused this growth. Of course, let's not forget about the amazing qualities of diversity and pride and respect that Senor Barguete brought to the table. This Friday, I'm excited to announce that we will be running a Indy Pulse session with Mr. Barguete's special leadership class in Estado de México. They will pilot a day full of poetry and identity that challenges the status quo and opens up their liberatory and critical consciousness. I'm even more excited that one of the Teach for Mexico teachers has started his own Pulse program called Pulso Nahuatl. I don't know if I said that right. I remember the day Jose Sandoval, aka Chema, another dynamic 2014 Penn, participated in one of our Indy Pulse sessions. I just didn't know that he would take Pulse and put it in his own hands and bring it to La Sierra. Jose Sandoval shares our vision of empowering student voice. Now his students, like Mr. Barguete, are a part of a growing network of students, poets, teachers who expand their limits through poetry and performance. My hope within the next 2 years is to send an Indy Pulse alumni like Marlene here in order to maintain the strong partnership with our presence in Mexico. This is not only to build the bridges, but to truly invest our students' voices and their potential to be the next generation of global leaders. With this momentum, my experience with Aulas Sin Fronteras has been nothing but fruitful. I will follow and it will follow me wherever I travel. I'm already met with the Teach for America Massachusetts Boston team, and they were more than welcome in potentially partnering with Enseña por México next year. Obviously, we have a long way to go to ensure that student voice is heard and empowered throughout the arts and in education around the world. Beyond community, we want to impart concepts of global leadership and ownership. We want students to realize the richness in one's own cultures, then engage and seek other cultures beyond their zip codes, beyond their neighborhoods. For many of our students, poetry may be the first exposure to a language outside of their own. This may be the first time they've ever been told to seek ownership of their own voice. Not only do I want to empower students to write poetry, to understand their pure realities, but I also want them to leave each year with a heightened desire to take risk in developing their own worlds. Through programs like Indy Pulse, Boston Pulse, and Aulas Sin Fronteras, we are helping close an identity, literacy, and imagination gap in education. We are creating opportunity for our youth to rediscover how limitless they actually are. Gracias.